Hello, hi, welcome back to Adventures in Music with me, Jim, where we listen to, talk about and do all sorts of things music-y. Today I thought I'd try and do something a little bit different. I'm just going to call it the A-Z of Prog. And I'm going to do several of these over time. It's just going to go through picking out albums that represent each letter of the alphabet, or bands that represent each letter of the alphabet. I might do an A to Z of metal, A to Z of indie, A to Z of who knows what, classic rock. But what I've got to do, I'm going to start off with this one, which is going to be prog. So it's a wide genre. It's prog rock, prog metal, and anything that sort of has sort of progressive leanings towards it. And there's more than enough room to be able to do this multiple times over, but I'm just choosing one album by one artist, and the only stipulation is that I've got to have heard it and played it, and it's been on the channel, and I just have to whiz through these. So in the future there'll be more of these, and I'll pick up obviously different artists, different albums, so on and so forth. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but they are brilliant records, and I love them. So actually, I can see a flaw in my plan already. The second album is not being played on the channel. The first one, this is Anekdoten. This is their album called Until the Ghosts Have Gone, or Until the Ghosts Are Gone. Anekdoten, a Swedish band, started off as a King Crimson, I don't know if they're a tribute band, but did a lot of King Crimson covers, and they eventually morphed into their own band doing their own thing, but retain a lot of King Crimson sound. They're absolutely brilliant. I love them. I did a first listen to one of their tracks probably 5.5 or 6 years ago, long time ago. And then this album, I don't know if I've actually listened to the whole of this album on the channel, but I certainly picked out 2 or 3 songs from it, and we've listened to that together. They are absolutely brilliant, and I heartily recommend them. More prog rock than metal, lots of mellotron in there, lots of guitars, lots of bass, some really funky, cool rhythms and stuff, and singing, and it's really good. So that's the first album. We have Until the Ghosts Are Gone by Anekdoten. The second album, this is where I'm saying, oh, oops. This is a Big Train, and this is their new album, or the newish album, the newest album, The Likes of Us. This is the first album with the new singer in the band, Alberto, and they played a lot of this at the gig that I went to 2 or 3 weeks ago when they played here in Milton Keynes. Absolutely wonderful band. They are a reasonably new discovery to me over the last 18 months to 2 years, and I'm very slowly starting to pick my way through their back catalogue, because there's quite a lot there to get at. But this is as good a place to start as any. It's as they are now. It's a representative of the band in 2024, and it sounds fantastic. It's symphonic, it's brilliant, it's inventive, it's clever. The musicianship is off the charts. Very much, again, prog rock rather than the metal side, and absolutely stunning, absolutely superb band. And I think most people by now are tuned into how good they are and know all about them. So there we go. Big Train, The Likes of Us. C. It's Caravan. In the Land of Grey and Pink. This wasn't the first thing I played by Caravan on the channel, but this is I think it's the second album I played from them. It's magnificent. It is absolutely stellar. It is of the Canterbury scene era, and it is one of a handful of albums that they released in the 70s, which were just perfect. Absolutely perfect. It's quirky, it's very English, it's fun, it has brass in it, it has keyboards, again prog rock, really progressive rock, from that early era of the genre, and a very worthy band in the whole sort of discussion. You have the sort of like the really big bands in prog from that era, but there was a whole smattering of fantastic bands underneath, sort of one layer down, and who could and should have been absolutely huge. Perhaps there just wasn't the drive or the ambition, or the sound wasn't quite not right. But these guys, absolutely fantastic. And again, if you're a prog fan, you already know that. So that is C, Caravan, In the Land of Grey and Pink. D, couldn't be anything else, could it? Is Dream Theater. So prog metal. Images and Words. I have yet to listen to all of this album. This is the beginning of my sort of Dream Theater deep dive, as it were. I started it with Rudy on the channel last week, where we listened to Metropolis Part 1, which comes from this album. I haven't been set any homework by Rudy to go away and listen to the rest of it, but obviously I'm going to. And he has a plan of sort of things I should be listening to and when we should be listening to them. I know quite a bit of Dream Theater from over the years. Some of it has worked for me, some of it not so much. But I have to say, what I've heard from this, which is just that one track so far, oh, and also Pull Me Under, I know that, which is the first track on there, is fantastic. And it has excited me to really sort of dig in and find out more. Dream Theater, as you well know, American prog metal band, probably the preeminent prog metal band, though there's arguments about Fate's Warning and Queensrÿche coming before that, who obviously set the stage, and I think it was down to Dream Theater to just sort of take all that, and they didn't invent this genre, but they made it more popular. They sort of brought it more into the consciousness of a wider record buying public. So yes, one of the very, very big and important bands of the genre. E. What could be E? It's Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course it is. It is Tarkus. So I couldn't... it's so hard to even describe how good this is. Let's put it down here so you've got it on the camera again. Not entirely instrumental, but so much of this record is instrumental. It is keyboard heavy, of course it is. Synths and keyboards, organs, pianos. It's Keith Emerson's world, and we've got just the most stunning musical but challenging suite of music. Not ever, but it is so ahead of its time, and really, really gained massive, massive popularity. They were at one stage one of the biggest bands in the world, and that kind of sort of does my noodle in a bit, that music like this was so popular with so many people. I find that really, really hard to comprehend in the sort of the cold light of 2024. If you look back to the early 1970s and think about what was popular, it's still hard to comprehend how big these bands were, and I find it extraordinary, really. So Greg Lake has got some incredible vocal parts, and he's got an amazing voice, we know that, and his bass and guitar parts on here are lovely, and Carl Palmer's drumming, as you expect, is just second to none. So there we go, it's Emerson, Lake and Palmer with Tarkus. That's E. F. This is a surprise probably for you. It is The Fierce and the Dead. I love this band. They are a really new discovery, and they are very, very current. They are quite local to me. They come from Rushden in Northamptonshire, and they are a four-piece. This is their latest studio album, which is called News from the Invisible World, and it's the first album of theirs that they've actually had vocals on. They've actually been singing, so that's a completely new thing for them. Although they've been there as a instrumental, proggy, post-rock, metal-tinged, experimental thing. I mean, they defy definition. they suddenly changed direction and added vocals to what they were doing in this last album. And we listened to it on the channel just a few weeks ago. And if you missed that, go and listen to it, because it's worth your time. Trust me, it's absolutely brilliant, and probably unlike anything else you've heard. It's brilliant. So that's F. G. What could be G? There are several choices here, aren't there? Well, I'm going to go with probably the most obvious, which is going to be Genesis, and this is the album Foxtrot. Genesis are, without question, one of the staple, important parts of the progressive rock movement, and in no small part due to a run of albums they had from the very early 1970s. Selling England by the Pound, Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, Wind and Rubbering, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. It's just extraordinary music, and very different from a lot of the other sort of progressive stuff that was around, which is more symphonic, more rocky. Genesis were much more sort of, I don't know, pastoral's the right word, but more of a storytelling and exploratory, slowly revealing a story over the passage of time. So it's incredible suites of music within their back catalogue. I think I've only got up to so far really sort of the Peter Gabriel era. We haven't moved forward yet into the Phil Collins singing section. And the band itself completely reinvented itself in the 80s and became a pop band rather than the rock band, the progressive rock band that they were initially. I think it cannot be overemphasized how important they were and are to so many people. They are a band that I've known about, been on my radar basically forever, and there's bits and pieces, snippets here and there that I've heard, but it's not really until I've started having this channel and we started listening to music I've really understood quite what they've been up to and what they're about and why they're so revered. So that is G for Genesis. G. What comes next? H. This is Haken. This is their second album called Visions. So I've featured several Haken albums on the channel before. Most notably, I'd say probably The Mountain, which is my favourite album of theirs. More recently, Fauna. We've had The Virus, Affinity. We've listened to all sorts of all the stuff from Haken over the years. And this is an album which, again, is brilliant and have not really sort of delved into on the channel. It has got an epic track on here, actually called Visions. It's the title track from the album, and it is nearly half an hour long. It is just amazing, absolutely incredible. And Haken are very much in the prog metal camp. They wear their influences on their sleeves. They draw inspiration, influence from all over the place. Notably, I'd say Dream Theater, but also going back into sort of the history of the genre. They bring in Gentle Giant a lot, which is a real interesting thing to hear. So that's the playfulness of the Gentle Giant music. They have slight leanings towards Yes and to Floyd and to Camel and to all sorts of other bands as well. But it's really brought up to date and given the sort of the heavier edge to it. They've even got sort of moments in there where you could think it might be Meshuggah or something, and it's just brilliant. Haken are very much deserving of being lauded as one of the premier prog metal bands on the planet. They totally are. Not everybody gets them, not everybody likes them. Of course, I get that, and I'm not here to change people's minds or suggest what you should be listening to, but I'm just giving you options and saying why these bands are so good. Are they a 6-piece now? I think they are. So they've got 2 guitars, bass, vocals, drums, and keyboards. They've actually now got, it's not new anymore. In the last few years, the old keyboard player left and a new guy came in, Pete Jones, who was actually the original keyboard player back in the day, and then he left to go and do some other stuff. But he's now come back into the fold. We've got Ray Hearn on drums, got Ross Jennings on vocals, got Rich Henshaw on guitar, Charlie Griffiths on guitar, and Connor Green on bass. So that's the lineup of the band. They are, I'd say, 90% a British band, but Connor is, I don't know if Connor's American, but he's certainly not, it doesn't come from London. But anyway, yeah, Haken, incredible band. H, we now move on to I. So I'm keeping this progressive, so I'm not going to be able to include Iron Maiden in here, but it does mean that I can include another band, which is IQ. This is IQ. It is the album called The Road of Bones, which we listened to in its entirety probably in the last 6 months or so on the channel. It's the only album of theirs that I've actually listened to all the way through so far, and I like it very, very much indeed. They are a kind of a contemporary band, or contemporaries of Marillion, came through maybe a year or two later, but sort of similar sort of era, still going very much. Neo-prog probably is the right term to describe them, so progressive rock, but without sounding old or without sounding like it's come from the golden era of progressive. Lots of synths, lots of electronics in there, really fun writing, concepts, heaviness in places, lightness of touch in others. Again, another fantastic, fantastic band, and heartily recommended. The band is IQ. This album is called The Road of Bones. J. There's only one thing I could use for J, wasn't there? Certainly in this initial pass. It's Jethro Tull, and thick as a brick. So, my first listening to Jethro Tull was not this album. It was my first listening to Jethro Tull was not this album. It was Aqualung, which is absolutely brilliant. I love it. But if you want to present Jethro Tull as a truly progressive band, then this album couldn't be more progressive. And it was kind of done with a bit of tongue-in-cheek, a bit of an inside joke, because they were being not accused, but sort of being suggested as being a progressive band. And they said, well, we're not really a prog band, we're sort of a rock band. But you want us to be prog? We'll show you prog. So they came up with this. It's a concept album with one song spread over 2 sides. It's the story of little Milton. And it's fun, it's brilliant, it's incredible. It goes places that you wouldn't expect. And if you are a fan of this genre, you know this album, you already have it. You probably listened to it 1,000,000 times. I've only listened to it so far once, and that was on the channel. It's not, as you can see, one of the very, very original versions, which is wrapped up in the newspaper. This isn't a proper sleeve, but it is an old one, probably a second, third pressing, something like that. But it's great. Jethro Tull, what can you say? So we then move on to K. And when we come to K, there's lots of things we could go for, but we kind of have to start at the beginning. Go with King Crimson, In the Court of the Crimson King. So sadly, King Crimson is a band that I cannot listen to on the channel because it is instantly blocked. No matter what I try, how much I sort of try and sort of cut, pause it, stop, start again, whatever I do is blocked, and it's just kind of not worth the hassle in the end. So I have listened to this. We've listened to it on Buy Me a Coffee, actually. I shared it on there. But they are a band that I've listened to away from the channel. And this is really important, this album. It is, arguably the start of progressive rock, and it's just incredible. There are 2 tracks, well, there's more than 2 tracks, so there's 2 tracks in particular which really are standout for me. So In the Court of the Crimson King, which is the final one, but also 21st Century Schizoid Man, the opener, is absolutely amazing. Epitaph and Moonchild, again, are great tracks. I Talk to the Wind also. There is no weak point to this album, and it created pretty much the entire genre by doing things that no one else had ever thought of doing. If you don't know it, you really, really do need to listen to it. There's more King Crimson, obviously, that followed this, where they took this initial germ of an idea and developed it and pushed it and did things even more so. But it starts here. This is the one you need to get and the one you need to listen to. L. Leprous. Norwegian modern band. This is the album called Pitfalls. I could have chosen any number of albums from them. They are classified as prog metal. I think they used to be a lot more metal in the past than they are in the last 2-3 albums. They're becoming less metal, more progressive alt rock almost. They are Radiohead-esque in places. They've never sort of lost that whole sort of metal aesthetic completely. The drumming and Einer's singing in places is so metal. He can do the growls, but he doesn't do it anymore. And the music on these records is absolutely sublime, and it's a surprise to me that it is not more mainstream. It's not known by the masses, because they are doing really clever, inventive, interesting, accessible stuff that most listeners to, for example, Six Music, which is a radio station here in the UK that champions new, modern, inventive, exciting music, but it doesn't touch on sort of progressive music at all. It doesn't have them in there, and it bothers me that this whole genre is ignored, and it's a shame, because I think some of the most interesting music being produced is within this so-called prog genre. Leprous. The album's Pitfalls. They are Norwegian, and that is my L. After L, we must be about halfway through. We get to M. So we're going to have Marillion. This is Brave. Marillion. There are two phases of Marillion, or 2 eras. There's the Fish era and then there's the H era. I'm going, I suppose, with the H era because it's more modern. It's more where I came into them. I'd known about Marillion back in the 1980s and knew 2 or 3 songs, but it wasn't until I listened to Neverland on the channel and then was starting getting recommendations to listen to what they were doing now that I really got into them in a big way. This is the album called Brave. This is their, maybe not quite their crowning glory, but it's not far off. It's a concept album. It's about the girl who goes missing and who loses her memory, is found wandering with no recollection of her past life, and it's fantastic storytelling, fantastic musicianship, and it's an album that has 2 different endings depending on how the needle lands in the groove at the start of side 2. So that's interesting. So every time you listen to it, it's a slightly different record. How clever is that? But yeah, so this is my M. It's Marillion, it's Brave, and it is genius. And of course we have listened to this on the channel. N. Nektar. This is A Tab in the Ocean. Oh man alive, it was a while ago that we listened to this. A really long time ago, probably 3 years ago, 4 years perhaps. And to my shame, I've not revisited it. I really need to get back to listening to more Nektar. We listened to Remember the Future, I think that was the other one, as well. Absolutely brilliant. They're not German, but they were big in Germany. I think they're a British band, and they decamped to Germany and released all their music from Germany, rehearsed there and based themselves there. But very, very interesting. Early 70s, very progressive rock, rather than the metal side of it, of course. But genius, absolutely genius. Nektar. Tab in the Ocean. For O, we are going progressive metal. We're going progressive death metal. We're going Opeth. I mean, there are other O's we could go with. Maybe we will another time. But this is where we're going to go for now. This is kind of one of the most important albums within the prog genre generally. There are some absolute cornerstones of the sort of whole genre, and some of them are laid down in the 1970s, some of them came in the 80s, some in the 90s, and some of them in the 2000s. This is one of the most important albums to come out in the 2000s, and is the marrying of death metal with progressive rock, with Stephen Wilson at the helm on the mixing desk and producing it. It's just sublime, absolutely brilliant. The vocals are harsh, the vocals are hard, the music is brutal, but the music is beautiful, and it is revered probably above all other records as being one of the greatest, if not the greatest, prog metal album of all time. Certainly with the harsher vocals in. It doesn't get better than that. I love it. We listened to it. It was worthy album of the month winner a few months ago. So O is for Opeth. P is for Pink Floyd. People say Pink Floyd's not a prog band. Other people say Pink Floyd is a prog band. Of course it's a prog band. I mean, what's the definition of a prog band? It is absolutely a prog band, and this is, of course, the most celebrated and decorated album, not just of theirs, but of almost any band in history. It is universally lauded, acclaimed, loved. It is set a standard in production, in songwriting, and in scheduling an album. The flow of how it goes is just absolutely wonderful. It's magnificent. You know it is. Of course you do. I don't really need to labour the point, but P is for Pink Floyd. Q is not for Queen, but for Queensrÿche. Operation Mindcrime. What an album. What an album. Again, this is a fantastic, fantastic concept album. Queensrÿche were one of the grounding bands for prog metal. This is their concept album, and is basically like Pink Floyd's The Wall, but for a metal generation. It's superb, cannot be bettered, and we listened to it on the channel not long ago. So, as I say, Q for Queensrÿche, and the album is Operation Mindcrime. R is for Rush. 2112. There are probably better albums from them. There are probably, there are undeniably better albums from them. But I'm talking about albums that we've listened to on the channel specifically. I'm trying to anyway, although I've got that wrong a little bit. 2112 is the gateway drug for me to Rush. that track, that opening track, that sidelong epic of 2112 is kind of one of the pinnacles of the whole of progressive rock. I'd class them more prog rock than metal, but they have certainly got metal leanings. They're probably progressive hard rock. We get bogged down with sort of trying to sort of pigeonhole things in genres and whatnot, but you know this album, you know this song, you know the band, and you know why it's important. R is for Rush. S is for Solstice. Solstice are a band that have been on the go since the early 1980s. They were absolutely contemporaries of Marillion and launched onto the scene in the 1980s at the Marquee Club in London and have been working away quietly ever since. And kind of, they started off very, very positively. They had this opportunity to be a big band, and it never quite happened. And they just bubbled away, kept going. There'd been sort of a few lineup changes along the way, and some people had come, some people had gone. But a few years ago, the lineup re-energized itself and got on board a new singer, and Jess Holland brought some magic to the band that perhaps had been missing there before, and all of a sudden it's what the band had needed, is what was rejuvenated them, it got them going. So this is the album called Light Up. They are a very local band to me. They actually come from Milton, Keynes, and are positive, symphonic, folky, happy, and wonderful. Absolutely wonderful bands. If you can get hold of their music, I urge you to do so. They're absolutely brilliant, and I can't speak highly enough of them. The band is Solstice. This album is called Light Up, but it's one of many that I could have chosen. T. Here's Tool. Here's Lateralus. What's not been said about Tool probably is not worth saying. American progressive metal band, clever, inventive, cerebral, unbelievable musicianship, just the best drumming, the best guitar playing, the best bass playing, the wordsmithing from Maynard James Keenan is like, I don't know. It's just everything about it is alchemy. It's just brought all this clever stuff together and it works. The band is Tool. This album is Lateralus, and I'm sure you know them already. So again, I don't really need to labour the point. UK. We listened to this a long time ago on the channel. It is Eddie Jobson, John Wetton, Alan Holdsworth and Bill Bruford. Bit of a super group. I think they did maybe 2 albums, not very many anyway. It is progressive, so progressive. It is pretty unbelievably proggy stuff. Again, early 70s. What date is this? Oh, late 70s, sorry. 78. But it was towards the end of that sort of golden era of prog, and probably the music was too clever for the mainstream. The whole of that sort of prog thing had moved on by then. So it wasn't ever sort of a massive thing. But those in the know are in the know. Great album. Great band, great musicians. UK. V is for this bad boy. It's Graaf Generator. Porn Hearts. a challenging listen, if ever I'm going to say so. Not my favourite record I've ever heard, I have to admit. It's a challenge. It's hard going in places. It's brilliant, and it's rewarding. It's not something I want to listen to on repeat or go back to again and again and again. I will listen to it another time, of course I will. And I'm actually very keen to hear more of their music, because I think more other stuff is not quite at this level. But this is a hard one to sort of go in with, but it's an important one. The band is Graaf Generator. The album is Pawn Hearts. Wishbone Ash, Argus. Arguments on this about whether this is prog or not, I don't care. I think it sort of kind of certainly has very proggy leanings. Amazing, amazing album by an amazing, amazing band. Everything about this I love. The bass parts, the guitar parts, the recording, the songwriting. It's genius, genius. Beautifully sung, hard rock with very progressive leanings. It's a classic. Why? It's only yes. Close to the Edge. What do we need to say about this album other than it routinely wins the best prog album ever made in lists and tier lists and polls? It's fantastic. I cannot say any more than what anybody else has ever said about it. It was my introduction to Yes on the channel, and it should be on everybody's radar. Everybody should know this album. But it's not just the sidelong epic that's important on here, Close to the Edge. It's the other two tracks on side 2. And You and I is just beautiful, 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 and a mini epic in its own right. And of course the same goes for Siberian Kutro. It's just, I don't know if that's how you say it. I always stumble over how this pronunciation of that. But it's phenomenal. As an album, it's just so well realised. And sadly, the last thing that Bill Bruford ever did with them. But Y is, of course, for yes. Z is for Zappa. It's Joe's Garage. This is Joe's Garage Part 1. There's a Part 2 and a Part 3, of course. I got myself in a right 2 and 8 listening to this, but I love it. I've come to absolutely love this album. I love this suite of 3 albums. The concept is fantastic. It's so clever. Frank Zappa is absolutely a genius, and it took me a while to sort of come to loving it as much as I have done. The concept of the album is well documented and known. A guy becomes a rock musician and becomes a rock star, and all the things that come with that going on inside his brain. And it's very clever. It's brilliantly realised. The playing is superb. The tongue-in-cheek, if you can call it that, writing is enough to sort of take your breath away at times. But if you take it for what it is, as a bit of social commentary, as satire, then it's genius, and it totally is. Absolutely fantastic. So that is my A to Z of Prog, Part 1. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll see you on the next video, whenever and whatever that is. Until then, this is Jim, over and out.